This is Prep Test 157, Section 1, Passage 1. The topic is Student Sit-in Protests and the Early Civil Rights Movement. The difficulty level on this passage is low, but here's what catches people. This passage disguises an argument as a history lesson, and if you read it like a timeline, you're going to get burned. Now, this is a humanities passage. The author is not just reporting what happened, they are ranking which developments matter the most. The main point here is that student-led protests, especially the freedom rides, were the turning point because they forced the federal government to act on desegregation beyond public schools. Now, the most important part of this passage is paragraph 4. That's where the author stakes their opinion. Everything before it is a ramp leading to that point. Now, paragraph 1 is pure setup. You get the background here. The 1954 Supreme Court ruling struck down segregation in public schools. But you want to catch the qualifying statement only to this one category. The author here is narrowing the scope of that ruling on purpose. That phrase is a seed that pays off at the very end of the passage. Then you get the introduction of sit-ins as a new tactic. The author rattles off what they accomplished. They energized existing groups, they created new ones, they pulled in new supporters. Now, you don't want to memorize the list here, just know the sit-ins mattered because they proved the model worked. You want to move at a normal reading speed here because nothing's hiding. But then paragraph 2 gives you the facts. With 4 students in February 1960, over 70,000 participants within a year and a half. You can skim the numbers, but what you can't skim is the last part. The author names 2 specific outcomes, the SNCC and the freedom rides, and that is a structural signal. The author is telling you exactly where this passage is going with 2 developments, and the rest of the passage is going to rank them. Then paragraph 3 covers the SNCC. It formed just months after the first sit-in. The key detail is it put students in leadership roles for the first time. Before the SNCC, students showed up. After it, students ran things. It also operated on its own, separate from older civil rights groups. So the movement was growing beyond its original institutions. But notice how much space the author gives SNCC, not much, just one paragraph. There's no dramatic language here, and that's a tell. The author respects the SNCC, but they don't think it was the game changer. Then paragraph 4 is where you slow way down. The very first phrase is the development that marked the clearest turning point. You want to stop and register that because the author just told you their thesis. Everything before this was a preamble. Now, the freedom rides were organized by CORE, the Congress of Racial Equality, which was already well established. So unlike the sit-ins, this wasn't some scrappy student invention. It was a coordinated campaign by an experienced organization. The rides challenged segregation on interstate buses and at terminals along the routes. Now, here is the moment that matters. The rides provoked violent attacks, and because of that violence, the federal government used force to protect the riders. The author calls this the first government action taken explicitly in the support of the cause of desegregation outside the public schools. Then go back to paragraph 1. You remember only to this one category? This is the payoff. The freedom rides broke through that wall. For the first time, the government acted on segregation beyond schools. That's why the author calls it the turning point. Not because the rides were brave, but because they challenged what the government was willing to do. Now, the key move here is the ranking. 3 developments: sit-ins, SNCC, freedom rides, stacked in ascending order of importance. The freedom rides sit on top because they changed the government's role. And that hierarchy is what the questions are going to target. The author thinks the freedom rides were decisive because they expanded federal involvement past a single area of segregation. The trap is reading this passage flat. A lot of students will treat the sit-ins, SNCC, and the freedom rides as 3 equal chapters in a story, but they're not. The author builds a ladder where each step matters more than the last. And if you miss that ladder, you're going to choose answers on main point questions that focus on the sit-ins. And those answers are going to sound right because the passage does talk about sit-ins a lot, but the passage talks about sit-ins to set up the freedom rides, not because sit-ins are the point. Now, before you get to the questions, you want to make sure you can answer these 3 things. First, why does the author rank the freedom rides above SNCC? Second, what is the connection between the 1954 ruling in paragraph 1 and the government intervention in paragraph 4? And third, why does the author specifically mention that the rides triggered violence. What work is that detail doing in the argument?